Hey, thanks all for being here. I'm blown away that there's so many here that were not here yesterday, so you're in for a treat today. We had 2 sessions yesterday with our special guest, and we are thrilled to have Dave Fanning back again today to chat for the next 45 minutes or so, depending upon how we can squeeze the time. Dave was just, well, for those who don't, a quick introduction. Dave Fanning has been on Irish radio since 1977. 77. Was the first DJ anywhere in the world to play U2 on radio, brought them into the studio in 1979 for 5 consecutive nights, had his listeners choose the A side to the first single, which was U2 3, of course, as I assume most of you know, and really has been there every step of the way throughout the band's career, just about always getting the exclusive for the first single from every new album, and was just last week inducted in the Irish Radio Hall of Fame.
I got away with that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I tell you, I have to say that, like something I said yesterday, Ireland is that size. So it doesn't mean as much as it, like, it's not exactly Alan Freed, you know?
So it's you. It's like you and 3 others at this point.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's kind of 1 or 2 every year. But some of the ones in the previous years, they've been posthumous. You guys know Jerry and Tony and all this kind of thing. And like, you know, like one of the ways to get in is die.
Well, we're glad you haven't done that yet. Stick around for a while, at least 45 minutes, okay? So we're going to chat with Dave, as I said, and hopefully have time for audience questions. We have a lot of stuff we want to cover, so I want to dive in. Dave, I know this is your first visit to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And to this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I know you had some time yesterday to look around, take in some of these exhibits. What do you think about what you've seen?
Number one, first of all, I can see where this is going. Why doesn't Ireland have a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Because Ireland is that size.
It's actually the second question on my list.
Really?
Here.
I knew it. Yeah, I could feel that. Yeah, we did have something once, actually. I don't know where, down around Fleet Street or somewhere. I can't remember. It was not very. Did somebody go to it? I don't know. It wasn't very good anyway. I remember that. But this is fantastic. I mean, like, I spent the whole day here yesterday. I was just on doing this kind of thing only for an hour or 2. So therefore, I had about 6 hours, and I have still got, I'd say, another 40% to see. I went in. It's a terrible thing to say that of all the exhibits and all the stuff that's there and all the memorabilia, you would think that you'd be looking, my God, there's such and such. And I was sending photographs of weird things like Born to Run, Bruce Springsteen, he wrote the lyrics kind of thing. I had to send that to my Springsteen fan. And like last week I saw the best movie I've seen this year, which is Elvis and Nixon. And the letter, if anybody's seen the movie, it's all to do with this letter that Elvis writes on an airplane. The letter is here. So I had to send that to, by the way, who I sent it to was a very good friend of mine called BP Fallon. And do you know BP, do you?
Yes.
Oh Christ, I forgot. He was with... BP has done so much, I forgot that he was on the Zoo TV tour. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Anyway, Beep watched the movie with me last week, and I just sent him the letter of the thing. And I said, while I went in then, and this is the point I was going to make, you would think that you would come to something like this and not necessarily watch something on a screen and think that's the best thing. But the inductees room, I went in for 5 minutes, and about 2 hours later I came out. Because it's just to see all the bits of where it is, and the great Little Walter and the stuff from the 50s, in with Neil Young, in with Joni Mitchell, in with Leonard Cohen, in with the Beatles, in with U2, and everything else. It's just fantastic. All that stuff is so good. And in fact, the last 4 years I haven't seen, so I don't know what loop it's on now. So if anybody can tell me when 2009 to now happens, I'll run along to see it. It's fantastic. Everything here is brilliant.
You are a well-known Bob Dylan guy. Did you get to see enough Dylan?
Oh, I saw enough Dylan. Yeah, I got my photograph taken beside posters of him, which is very sad. Yeah, I mean,
that's what we do with the U2 stuff. Don't be embarrassed.
Really weird thing about, like, people have asked me there earlier on about with Rattle and Home. I mentioned yesterday as an album that I like, but there's some very bad tracks. I think dodgy tracks on Rattle and Home. I like that. Like my favorite Beatles album is the White Album. There's some really bad tracks on that. But it's if you follow a band and you go with everything, you don't just go with the big stuff that's popular. You go into, okay, what have they done this year? What are they releasing this year that is their art? And even though some of the things mightn't be as good as they should be, that's okay by me. Do you know what I mean? Because that actually almost solidifies why you like them so much. It's yours. So Bob Dylan this century has released about 5 albums. I don't think any of them are any good. I've seen him live 16 times. I've never seen him once good. Not once in my life. I know, like when Bob comes to Dublin, I've got to go and see Bob. He's come to see me. So I always go. I kind of wish he never comes again, because in concert he's no good. But Bob Dylan is God. He is he is the man. Everything he's ever done, even the shit stuff is great. That's the point I'm making. I vaguely mentioned yesterday there was an 18-month period in Bob Dylan's life, Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde. And in fact, Blonde on Blonde was a double album. That's 4 albums in 18 months. It's just whatever you two have done, and I know they've done so much, he just kicked away the jams. I better not say what the MC5 said, but you know what I'm saying? He just did it. It's fantastic, and he's done it so often too. He's the man. And by the way, while I mentioned Springsteen earlier on, I'm going to throw another lob. I don't get Springsteen. Sorry. And by the way, I've interviewed Bob Dylan and I've interviewed Bruce Springsteen, and Bruce is the nicest guy I could meet, and I just don't get the music. Sorry. Who? Bruce?
Okay, Dave. But you have a personal relationship with U2, not so much with Bob Dylan.
That's true.
40 years with U2, 40 years you and U2. What has it meant to you personally?
I've just had such fun. I mean, as I said yesterday, the reason I got behind U2 is timing and luck. It's not really much else. There was a lot of other bands in Dublin. There was the Undertones from Derry in the north. There was the Boomtown Rats from Dublin. They had their albums out, and I loved them more than I liked the first things I heard from U2. But I was in Pirate Radio for 2 years, and I got more demo tapes from U2 than any other band, because it was exactly the same time that I was coming up. And I really liked the progression. I saw little bits of what they were doing, that I saw that's better than what that was. And when the Boy album came out, I wasn't as enamored as everybody else was, but I still thought it was just different. There was something about U2. There was rock, there was new wave, there was punk, and they just weaved in between the whole thing. They were never one or the other. They were never any of that. And it was something kind of gauche and weird and new. And did you ever see the early U2 stuff when they're on stage and that? I mean, like, come on, it's embarrassing, as it should be. That's what's good about it. If they were cool from the word go, forget it. They would have burnt out, and it's better just to keep going and keep going up like that. And they did. And they just kept getting better and kept doing stuff that I liked.
You're all still mates, though.
Oh, yeah. But I slag them all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to. Oh, believe me, if you come from Dublin, you slag everybody. Your mother.
On that note, do you think, with the state of the music industry right now, do you think there will ever be another band the same caliber as U2?
You see, when you say the same caliber, I don't think that can possibly be the question. The whole thing has changed. It just can't be like that anymore. It isn't like years ago. You would earn money. You would go into town on the bus. You would hand that money over to a guy behind a counter. He would hand you a piece of vinyl. You would take it home. You'd put the needle in the groove and you'd listen to it. And if you bought an album, if you could actually afford an album, you'd learn off the serial number. You knew everything about everything. Yeah. Now, if I mentioned a song to you now that you should listen to, within 35 seconds, you could get that on your phone. Now, I know that's great. I think it's terrible, because the journey has been cut out. The work to earn the greatness of music is gone. And there's a whole, and I know that might sound stupid, but there's a whole generation out there who's getting music for free, and therefore music has been devalued. That's the discussion we should be having, and I think it is. So it's a different world we're living in. People don't want their Taylor Swifts or, Justin Timberlakes or Bruno Mars or whatever it happens to be in the way I wanted things years ago. It's all changed and it's all different. The democratization of music is great in so many ways, in that everything is equal across the internet, but everything equal isn't necessarily the best way for me to get music. And like all the great bands that I liked, from Pink Floyd to Led Zeppelin and all that kind of thing, they'd never see the light of day today, because it's a lot of luck that sees the light of day, and then it's a big, huge money machine behind so many people. And I'm not that interested. Having said that, there's always great music out there. There's always, like I mentioned one band yesterday from Leeds. Were you the guy who sat beside me last night? A guy from Leeds, a guy called Alt J. I mean a band called Alt J. And I really like their music. Again, lives are crap, but they're really good 2 albums. So I can always find good new music. It's just not the way it used to be. Like I was in the Beatles fan club for 7 years, right? I go back to silly times, It's a different thing.
I have to apologize. I forgot to introduce everybody on stage. So I was so excited to start talking to Dave. We have 3 fellow at U2 staffers: Scott Calhoun, Becky Myers, Ross Perry. So that's who is talking for the next. So I apologize to the 3 of you. I was so excited. So Dave, as you mentioned yesterday, we talked during the sessions about this sort of the luck aspect of U2 getting started, right? Right time, right place. Yeah. They formed their band right when rock radio, right when you were getting on radio in Dublin, across Ireland, obviously. About a year after Hot Press formed, right? A respected music magazine. But clearly, we can't attribute 40 years of U2 success to luck. So when you think about the other things that have got them from where they were then to where they are now? What comes to mind? My ambition.
Well, no, the first thing that comes to mind is friendship. I mean, like, for instance, is there a band out there at all? I mean, you take the Rolling Stones, gosh, even some of the former members of the Stones could form another band. There's lots of bands that have come back with 5 or 6 different members. Members change all the time in bands. They started together literally 40 years ago this weekend in one, today, yeah. In, what do you call it? Was it Larry's Kitchen it was? Yeah, whatever, yeah. And that kind of thing. There's a couple of other members there as well. And quickly there weren't. But like, that's how long ago it was. And those 4 guys have been together all the way. They've never not been together. Wasn't there one gig that Adam missed in South America or something? Whatever, Sydney, whatever, yeah. And like that kind of, but they've always been, you know, the band to do it, you know. In fact, I just thought of something there, sorry. But yeah, no, it's just that, like, that's just the way it is. And who else has been together that long? I mean, who else has been at the top that long? Like Led Zeppelin, biggest band of the 70s for the 5 years they had, like as the number one. U2 got that in the 80s. And they were meant to be gone by 1990. The rule book says, that's it, you got your 5 years. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, if you, like, those 5 years were probably, to me, maybe, you know, 84 to 90 kind of thing or whatever. And in 86, they brought out... what do you call the thing? Wide Awake in America, the EP, which was, you know, a live version of Bad, much better than the one on Unforgettable Fire and all that. And there was something really happening with U2 then. And sometimes it happens with a band that you get handed this thing. I mean, after Born in the USA, Bruce got it too. It's like, here's the keys to the gate of greatness, okay? Because everybody loves you now. The next album just needs to be the killer album, and you're going to be the greatest thing for a few years at the very least. So Bruce brilliantly went that way with a personal album and lost half his fans, but he didn't want to do the Born in the USA part 2, and therefore he gained loads more over a period of time. But U2 brought out the Joshua Tree, and they became the biggest thing ever. And they've never let that go. They were meant to be gone by 90. I mean, like, obviously bringing out another album in 93 in 93 and 96 and 99, as all bands do, and the U2 fans would love them. But they went to different heights all the time. I mean, who would have thought, how could they have been the biggest band of the 1990s? That was not written in any rock and roll thing. And then the biggest band of the noughties, and probably still now. I don't get it, you know. Having said that, still now, no, I do get it in terms of it's just fantastic. Having said that about now, I don't know, like the ground, the thing isn't the same anymore. The foundations aren't there for what rock and roll was. So it's a different kettle of fish now, you know. There's too many people out there who would never know who U2 are and don't care. That's fine.
So in the 1990s, you know, there was a lot of good bands coming out of Ireland, Hot House Flowers, you know, Cranberries, and it seems like that scene has died down for a lot of reasons, but are you seeing any new acts over there, or anybody that...
All right, this is one I get into trouble for this, because there are a bunch of new bands, and they're doing quite well, and they're all terrible. I don't like them. I mean, there's a it's not like, I mean, like, you know, there's going to be new good bands again, but at the moment, the bands that get a big crowd, it's just, they just whinge all the time, and they're just... Like, do you know this? I'm sorry, I've nothing against, I've never met Ed Sheeran, but it's the Ed Sheeran effect of, there's a lot of guys with guitars moaning about, like, by the way, when I say moaning, people think Leonard Cohen moans. No, he doesn't, he's a genius, he's brilliant. Or that Bob moans. No, he doesn't. These guys moan about nothing, about their middle-class, fabulous existence. And like, but there's, seriously, but there's a lot of other bands out there like that too. Like, I'm not going to mention them by names. I don't want to get into trouble because I don't play them on the radio, these other bands, and they probably know I don't like them. I don't care. I'm not as important in any rock band's life as I used to be. But it's just, I don't like where it's all going. And when you mention those other bands, it's not just nostalgia. But like Hot House Flowers were great fun, and they were a good laugh, or An Emotional Fish, or a lot of these bands. Cranberries didn't necessarily do it all for me. But I mean, there was a lot of good times, but the times were different. It's not the same thing now. And what a lot of people want these days is music that I don't think is very good, frankly. It sells well.
I mean, the bands you mentioned, wasn't that part of a time, I guess, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, like the Joshua Tree, when U2 hit the world stage, wasn't there this rush of the industry flocking to Dublin, flocking to Ireland to look for the next U2?
Yeah, that was one of the saddest things ever, because every single band was judged by U2's success. You're too much like U2, you're not enough like U2. And that was the way all the time. I'll give you a perfect example, like when singles were important. For those of you who don't know singles, ask your parents, which is 7 inches of vinyl. and they used to be reviewed in the music papers and all that. I mean, all the major magazines in Britain, which is across the water, in the UK and wasn't Ireland, obviously, they'd get 100 of these sent in a week, and they go, I know. Oh, an Irish band. So they actually reviewed these things, and a lot of Irish bands got publicity over in Britain in a way that they would never have got before U2. Now, where that publicity led them was up to them, and maybe a little door was opened. A lot of them didn't go through, obviously. I mean, there's been no major successes. Obviously, the Cranberries were huge for a while, which I don't totally get, but there you go. I mean, I like whatever, not my music.
Yeah. And the Script is fairly popular these days.
What was I? Oh yeah, Bob Dylan, yeah.
These new young bands, they're definitely got to be more savvy when it comes to social media and marketing and finding how to reach their fans.
Scott, you're saying that as though it's a good thing.
Well, I'm saying it as a fact, but thinking about for the future of U2, what would you the relevancy question about what does U2 need to
There's
worry about?
There's two things about the
these
relevancy
days?
question. It is pretty amazing the way they get it together to know what it is they might do over the next few years, more than other bands. And it's pretty good what they do, I must say. And they have a handle on all this thing that I can't believe, and still be true to who they are. They have it all pretty well sussed, and it's really good. And I've nothing against a band being entirely on top of the business that surrounds it, so long as they can still be themselves. They're still themselves, so it's fine. But the other question, or one part of, I think, of what you're saying is, there's a credibility question all the time, like relevance. In other words, how can we be relevant? How can we be credible? What's so great about relevance or credible? Just play your rock and roll and shut up. What does it even mean, being relevant?
Next time you talk to Bono, would you say that to him?
Just shut up with this relevance and this credibility. And by the way, people still use phrases like street cred. Geez, punk was 40 years ago. Forget it. It doesn't matter. So long as you're making music that you believe in and somebody else likes it, nothing else should matter. So you don't have to be relevant. Relevant to what? To the Taylor Swift audience? She's, that's fine. If a Taylor Swift audience wants to buy you too, that's fine. I'm just saying, those concepts shouldn't mean anything.
Well, on that note, how long do you think U2 can continue?
Listen, wait a minute. When U2 played, there was a gig that U2 played in the Bagot Inn in Dublin, and they played somewhere else. We used to play on a Tuesday night with the Blades. The Blades go on first. I'd play records in between the whole thing, vinyl, needle, and then U2 would come on. And I was thinking, wow, they've played 6 nights in the Bagot. That's pretty good. And then the long story happened that they wanted to play in the stadium in Dublin. The stadium would be about 1,800 seats or something like that, I think. And I was just thinking, they're going to make a fool of themselves. And I mentioned this yesterday, and somebody said, yeah, they gave away all the tickets. And I think they probably did. There's no way they could have sold that many tickets. So, for a band to play the stadium it was just the biggest thing. I thought, wow, fair play, that's really good. And I had no idea they'd even play ever in London, let alone anywhere else. None. Hadn't a clue. So I have no idea about those kind of things. No idea.
How long do you think U2 can continue?
That's what I mean. I don't know.
But in terms of age.
Just in terms of that, of the most recent album. That was a gamble, that album, in some ways, because it's like a diary of the early days of Bono. And it's a really honest and true album of those early days of Bono. And people really seem to like it. The show that went with it, even the cynics who thought that the 360 and all the other things and Zoo TV, etc., were too much, even they reviewed it and really liked it. Not that I care about reviewers, but I'm just saying, it's really good that at this stage people like so much of what they do. And what they were doing was selling their youth, because Songs of Innocence, it was just the songs of growing up. And they did it brilliantly in an audiovisual way that was just incredible, obviously, as usual. But all of that was brilliant. So if they keep up, what are the Songs of Experience going to be? I don't necessarily know what that could be. That could be the first 5 years of the 80s of what it felt to becoming rock stars. I've no idea, because I haven't heard. I don't know.
So U2 has had sort of a, I don't know what word I would use, sketchy relationship with some Dublin people, some Irish people, some issues over the years. Do you want to talk about the tax situation?
Yeah,
and
I was talking about this last night.
All the flack they've gotten?
And I don't understand anything at all to do with money. And my innocence about this is, I'm probably completely wrong, I don't know, but 99.999% of the money that U2 earn is earned outside of Ireland. They live in Ireland and pay their taxes on the money they earn in Ireland. And half the people I've met here have all gone to Ireland to see U2 and whatever. And they do whatever it is they're supposed to do. To take it out of the country of where you live has really annoyed a lot of people. Really, really annoyed an awful lot of people, especially the keyboard warriors who just want to hate U2 because they're big. And that's fine. They're out there all the time. They used to be nerds at home in their bedroom. Now they have a voice. Anyway, the point about it is that I don't get it. I mean, I'm probably wrong. I don't understand the whole thing about what's so bad about necessarily if they do earn all that money outside, if their organisation or whatever it's called, their offices are in LA and all the rest of it. I don't quite get, because they live in Ireland, they pay a lot of taxes in Ireland. I don't know. So I'm afraid I'm not the right person to ask that. I just don't know.
But well, I guess what I'm getting to is there's been like this history of fighting against U2 from within,
listen,
right?
wait a minute.
Go back to Self-Aid,
Irish.
right?
Look, Bono was the one who said years ago, he'd be driving down LA and be stopped at the traffic lights, and a guy would get out and he'd go over to Bono and he'd say, God, look, it's Bono, U2. I want to be like you. And like, you know, he'd do it in Ireland to go to a traffic light and say, I want to get you. And that's the difference in Ireland, you know, like, you know, I just want to hit you. And like, that's the way it is. It's just, it's not as heavy as you might think, but we do get to hear a lot about U2, obviously, because the biggest exports Ireland has had in the last 50 years, as people know, would be Guinness and U2, and they're big, you know, they really are big. And if you're going to be that big, people just want to push you off the pedestal, and there's nothing too bad about that. I'm glad that people don't like U2. It's good, it's healthy.
Do the Irish hate Guinness as much as you two?
No, actually, I drink Guinness. The only drink I drink would be beer, and I like Guinness. I know it's a stout, but yeah, I like that.
So one of the things here at the Rock Hall, obviously, we should talk about U2's influences. We lost David Bowie earlier this year, and I maybe a lot of you guys can relate to this, but that was for me. I'd always listened to David Bowie. I was aware of his hits and all that sort of stuff growing up in the 80s, listening to those songs. But when he died, it was a chance for me to sort of really learn more about him. And it just kind of struck me that U2 really owes a lot of
You've no idea. I mean, David Bowie, like, okay, here's somebody I can really talk about, because not only have I met him 5 times, I love David Bowie. But more importantly, I bought the Space Oddity album in 1970, and then I bought The Man Who Sold the World in 1971. And then when Hunky Dory came out, it was just like, it just changed everything. And obviously then Ziggy Stardust changed everything again. So I was a fan for a good while. That Space Oddity album is absolutely brilliant. Some great songs on it. But David Bowie was just, I mean, he was just fantastic. He was the 1970s, the single most important solo artist. If Joni Mitchell was the female, he was the male, and he was just the man in the 70s, everything. Of course they owe an awful lot. And one of the reasons is, and this goes back to something I was saying, which is Top of the Pops on television. It was a program, it was only a half an hour a week that you could see anything to do with music, like a Soul Train here or any of those kind of things. And it was just so important every Thursday night at 7:30. And when David Bowie came on in 1972 with Mick Ronson and played Starman or whatever, it just changed the course of everything. And suddenly he became the biggest thing ever from that 4 minutes. And Bono had seen that, and everybody saw that. Gavin Friday in particular is obsessed with David Bowie, and rightly so. And of course, obviously, when you see the what do you call it, the whole you see the Wood Road and all the rest of it. When you see the thing, that's Bowie behind the buildings and all that, behind the houses and all that. And like, Bowie was he just bestrode the 70s. I mean, he changed it every single time. I didn't go with him all the way. Half of Young Americans album I didn't particularly like that much. Station to Station would be my favourite album, that was 76. So he was just everything in this 1970s. So if you were in Dublin in 1972, 73, and you were in school or just coming out of school, then Bowie would have been huge to you. Because also, one of the things that sums up the 1970s is a phrase that's been used, which is your father coming in, like the music of the 70s, particularly over in our part of the world, your father coming in, watching Top of the Pops, and after a few minutes going, is that a boy or a girl? And that sums it up. That sums up so much of the 70s.
So where do you see, in U2's career, where do you most visibly see his influence?
Whoa. God, I could say Passengers isn't unlike side 2 of Low or Heroes. I don't know, really. I mean, their songs aren't as immediately accessible, jump out of the radio, simple songs as David Bowie's were. By the way, when I say simple, I mean really good simple. So I have no idea. You need to ask the band that.
So, U2's always been at the top of the voter polls over there, the fan polls in Ireland, except Hozier knocked him off recently. How do people feel about that? Are they sort of sick of U2 outside of the normal?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are kind of sick of U2, but that's cool, you know? Like, they've been on top for a very long time. So when Hozier or any of these type of people come along, it's always good for a change or good for something different. But some of the other bands, it just doesn't do it for me. But people still like U2, don't get me wrong. I mean, if they did You know, if they did Croke Park tomorrow, they'd sell out 3 in a minute. Having said that, do you know who sold out 5 Croke Parks? Garth Brooks. Yeah, 480,000 people in a population of 4 million. Beat that. By the way, he didn't play any of them. There was a controversy. It was so controversial, the whole thing was called off.
Why is it so? And U2's had trouble over the years getting certain, like I remember the Pop Mart shows. There were fighting over should they do 1 or 2, fighting over 1 or 2 at Slane. They did
Yeah,
3.
Slane in
They did
particular
3
was a bit
at,
of a problem.
Yeah, they
because
did 3
no
at
band ever
Croke.
plays more than 1 Slane. And they
So
would-
why is it always a problem for them to get
And
shows
listen,
scheduled?
hold
What's
on
the
a second.
deal?
It's not necessarily there's always a problem. There's always something. Do you ever notice the way when U2, this is going to sound very cruel, but when U2 bring an album out, somebody steals the lyrics or steals the tapes or something, which is just more publicity. It's all grist to the mill. It doesn't mean anything, you know. The gigs get played, the tickets get sold, the albums get made, the records get listened to. You know, but there's always some kind of controversy. But if you buy into it, you know, you're wrong. But do you know what I mean? I mean, like for instance, like there's always the cliches, like you know, yeah, we really want to get this album down now because the Edge is on fire. Ah, shut up! He's been on fire for 10 albums. Sick of it. You know, like which cliche do you want? You know, you have to be Irish and pull the rug out from underneath. Even you too.
I think we're recording this.
I don't care.
Did you hear what Dave Fanning said? Okay, so let's hit a couple moments from the band's history that were huge in terms of getting them from where they started. Red Rocks, what did that mean to you?
Yeah, Red Rocks. Oh gosh, I've just thought of your man's name who did the Tube in London. Who? Yeah, Malcolm. Yeah, Malcolm
that's
Geary.
it,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Malcolm did that. Didn't he do Red Rocks? He did, I think. Yeah, and then he put it onto the Tube as well. Now the Tube was a very important program at tea time on a Friday. Paulie Yates and what do you call him? Jules Holland. Yeah, and it was a really important program. And they put all that thing on. The Red Rocks thing was astonishing. Because they were really up against it for the actual gig they had to play in the rain and the bad weather and all the rest. And it just solidified something. And it basically was end of part 1 of U2. Like, it was a live album, and like, Under a Blood Red Sky. That was the end. Now, let's see what happens next. What happens next is what I mentioned earlier on of Wide Awake in America and Joshua Tree and all the rest of it. So it was just a lovely way to end, saying, wow, okay, they really are good. And this fool climbing up the top of the stacks with his white flag and all that. Mad Carry On. So, yeah, it was good.
And part 2 would have been at the end of Rattling Home.
Yeah, part 2 would have been the movie for the end of Rattling Home. And then, of course, obviously the whole thing ended, the decade ended, and then they had to go and dream it all up again, as they say. And that was Octung Baby. And then it all came around again, which was great.
Okay, so something else, present time. The band, as they've gotten older, they collaborate with a lot of younger artists and they mentor and they help them out. Are you seeing them do that in Ireland with any of the younger bands or artists starting?
No, not necessarily. They're not there to do that kind of thing because you make it look like there's a scene and they're on that scene. They're not really on the scene. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, they always have been very good. Has anybody seen that Beatles movie that's out at the moment? See, I knew I'd get around to the Beatles sooner or later. The Beatles movie that's out at the moment, the Ron Howard thing, it's brilliant. 3 years of the Beatles, 63 to 66, the tour. Well, like, there's a bit in that. It's brilliant the way the Beatles are on the plane and they're always talking and checking out the support bands, be it Lindsay DePaul or be it whoever, the Walker Brothers and all that. And it's fantastic the way they do all that, that like no matter how much in the maelstrom of the madness of the Beatles, they were able to do that. You two have always been quite good like that, but in a quiet kind of way. You don't really hear about it too much. Like the money they give to some big, I don't even know what the charity is called, it's sort of mentioned so little, of getting young people to learn how to play music through music schools and that. And it's really kind of underneath the radar. And the more under the radar it is, the more they like it.
Music generation?
Yeah,
Music generation.
Music generation. Yeah.
How big, what are your thoughts on their appearance at Live Aid? And I mean, for me, that was what catapulted them from, they were my band, and now all of a sudden, I think
at that time, it was like they were right before Live Aid, they were like the biggest underground band.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then at that point, that's when I knew I had to share them with the world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, I mean, if you heard the proper stories of what happened when they went back in to the dressing room afterwards.
We'd like to hear those proper stories right now.
I wasn't there. I wasn't, actually, my wife was actually at the gig, but I wasn't. I was doing stuff on the radio in Dublin about it. But he it was close to fisticuffs. It was really heavy stuff of like, how could you have done this? You've blown it. And we had this and this and this song to play, and then he starts doing all this stuff that shouldn't have worked, and for some reason it just hit a chord. And as I said yesterday, there was only one act at Live Aid whose album sales went down after Live Aid, and that was Adam, and everybody else's went up. But U2's in particular, who had at that stage about 5 albums behind them, they went right into top tens right across the world. Something connected. There was the Queen performance and there was the U2 performance, and something. Well, David Bowie's was funny because I don't think David Bowie's thing, or David Bowie as I call him, I don't think it worked. I thought it was, I just thought what he did, by giving over his one whole song to the African thing, absolutely, that's different. But no, I don't mean that. I mean, like, the stuff he did then in terms of getting down on one knee and all the stuff of the Lord's Prayer and stuff. There's a time and a place, and I wasn't sure if that was really the right thing. But it doesn't matter. David Bowie's brilliant, so I love him.
What are your thoughts on all of the non-music stuff that the band does, particularly Bono? But it's not just Bono now, right? Because Adam has been active in the last couple of years in, what's it called, Walk in My Shoes?
Yeah, look, hold on. Yesterday we were here, and all that stuff was talked about yesterday. You have no idea. There's one thing I will say 100%. You've no idea of the commitment Bono puts into all this kind of stuff. I found much the minute U2 are not being U2, it's unbelievable the amount of time, effort, and absolute push that he gives to every single thing in terms of the charity work that he does. It's phenomenal. He really gives it 26 hours a day, and I really take my hat off to that, because there comes a point when he gets so many brickbats and so many people giving out to him, and they really go for him in Ireland in a lot of ways, and he just still does it. It's fantastic. It really is. I mean, seriously now. That's one where I'll totally take my hat off. If I hated the band, I'd have to genuflect in front of that.
When are you going to see him again? What's on your schedule?
I have absolutely no idea. I think they're in LA at the moment. They were in Vegas the other night. I have no idea. I haven't a clue. I mean, whatever happens, happens, I never know. I don't go out of my way, Like, for instance, for all this U2 stuff, I've never really been in the studio with them when they've ever done anything. I've never, I was at certain things, like the With or Without You video that I mentioned the other day, or something like that. But I've never actually, I've done another video too in London, but I've never been in the studio as they're doodling away for a whole day necessarily. Even though I've done stuff with them in the studio, they've come out to me to do something or whatever, an interview. So, like, I'm not Bono's brother. I don't know much. I'm not Norman. Actually, I went with Norman to the Barcelona gig.
Do you have of all the U2 gigs you've seen over the years, do you have a favorite?
There was a gigs that they used to do in a club that I was a DJ in called McGonagall's in Dublin, and they played on Tuesday nights there as well. It was always a Tuesday. And there was one of those gigs that was funny because I know you're not going to believe this, but the stage is about half the size of this one, and there's a tree in the middle of the stage. Permanent tree. The amount of bands who were able to utilise that tree. There's a guy called John Otway and Wild Willie Barrett. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. But U2, just like, Adam would be on his bass, he just had to get out of the way of it all the time. It's ridiculous. It's really stupid. But it just was what it was, and it was just funny. And I thought they were pretty good at those ones, because they really got the crowd was really, was just something about it. The place was very small as well, but a quarter the size of this. I really like that. But obviously the big gigs, the bigger they get, some of them are just fantastic. When Zoo TV started, it was like, what is this? Brilliant. I loved it.
Do you have favorite albums, favorite song?
Me? Well, favourite song would be The Fly, I think, just for the overproduction of it all. They've made a big mistake, put too much production on it, and it's brilliant. I wish they put more. It's so good. And because I usually don't like that. An album, probably. I only say Rattle and Hum because if you follow a band, you should like an album that isn't necessarily as good as some of the others, but it's a statement of who they are, and I like that.
What did you see in them? Like, how have they grown? Like from when they were 19 when you met them?
Yeah, but like they just got better, as many bands do. I mean, like half them couldn't play their instruments at the very beginning, obviously, as it should be. And they've played them together, and they find out how to do things. And they cheat from they were doing like Rolling Stones songs and Bay City Roller songs and all that kind of stuff at the beginning. And that's what you do, And then very quickly on, they were writing their own stuff. It's just they had time to grow. Bands don't have time to grow much anymore because record companies, or whatever deal somebody might have, they just, if it doesn't happen within the first one or two, then they don't get a return. I mean, Joe Elliott from Def Leppard lives in Dublin, and Joe Elliott is here. He lives in Dublin to the point where. Sorry, I'm just watching that up there. What's going on up there? Oh yeah. So the Joe Elliott, he says himself, like by about the second or third Def Leppard album, it was like all or nothing. They sold their souls, and if the album sold 10 million copies, they wouldn't get one penny back because they owed so much. It did sell 10 million. In fact, it sold about 12 million. The next album sold another 14 million or so. So they were on the pig's back. They did fine. It was brilliant, but it was a gamble. Like they were gambling their lives away to make sure that people knew who they were. They got the best producer. The album was pushed everywhere. Expensive videos, and it worked. Doesn't work for everybody though.
Yeah, I guess my question for you as you walk over is how many times do you think you've interviewed U2?
I think
Hundreds?
Quite a lot. Here comes number 466. Adam Clayton, how are you, Adam? Right. There he is. Very good. Wait a minute. Can I hear Adam okay, yeah? Yeah. Adam, I'm not sure if I can hear you too well. Say hello.
I can hear you really well, Dave.
Oh, come on. I can hear you very well, sorry. Adam, how are you?
I'm very good, very good.
Okay, you're in Los Angeles at the moment, and a couple of nights ago you played in Vegas, which was the first time you played in front of a sort of a big crowd in about 6 or 8 or 9 or 10 months. What was it like?
It was wonderful to be back in front of a crowd. Vegas is like our spiritual home. It's like the future city where all entertainers end up. And it was actually a really good bill. Lots of great people on that bill. Drake was on the bill. Sia was on the bill. 21 Pilots. It was fun.
And what about the actual choice of the songs that you played? I mean, there were no new songs. You started with Desire. You made sure you got something in about Donald Trump. Beautiful Day and One and Every Breaking Wave and also I Still Haven't Found. No new songs on Friday night.
That's right. We weren't really ready to air those songs. Originally, we thought we might do some new songs, but then we realized that between now and when the album comes out, it's going to be the sort of next year at some point. So it just felt like the wrong time to air those tunes.
Okay, can I just say those tunes? There are people here in this audience that would know about 40 to 50 different U2 songs that are either in gestation, half written, were played. Nobody knows anything. So let's put it this way. I mean, is there a Songs of Ascent? Is there a Songs of Experience? Is there a different album altogether? What might be? Tell us something. Give us a morsel, Adam.
Well, this is definitely going to be Songs of Experience. This is going to be taking everything that we've learned in the last 40 years and consolidating and condensing it into one piece of wisdom or advice, which we will distribute at some point.
Jeez, he's like a politician. All right. Okay. Adam, one of the things about the tour the last time round was the fact that it was about, just like the album was, about growing up in Dublin. The way those songs were, if you like, accepted on the tour, and I saw it in a bunch of places, including Vancouver and Paris, London, Dublin, it was accepted to the point where I think some of the newer songs, in other words, from the album Songs of Innocence, went down better than some of the sort of hits. Does that make you feel really good that those songs sort of resonated so well with so many people?
Yeah, I think those songs really touched a chord. And it was partly they resonated because they were our story, but it was everyone's story. Those shows on the Innocence and Experience tour had a real power because of how they connected back with everyone's history. And you could feel that in the room, that focus and concentration. So with these new songs, which will be Songs of Experience, which will connect to people in the same way, but hopefully they'll be a lot lighter. I think really where we're trying to get to with these new songs is where we came from was a tough, dark place, but where we've been and where we are now is a much lighter, more enjoyable place to be.
And the fact that the gigs were all indoor, this was a big decision to make for you two to go back inside, if you like. Was it a good move on your part, do you think? Did you enjoy that experience? Because the reception has been absolutely ecstatic, whereas the reception often from some of the previous tours was some people might have said, oh, I don't know, they've got too big. In other words, when you went smaller, it worked.
I think we always, our ideal venue is the arena, up to 20,000, which seems like a lot of people, but even in a 20,000 seater, you still get that sense of intimacy. When you go into stadiums, it is a different experience. And we've had some great stadium shows. I mean, Zoo TV was a stadium show. Pop Mart was a stadium show. 360 was stadium shows. But it's a different experience. There's more spectacle involved. And I think those indoor shows, much more about a musical experience, and there's a communing with the audience. And at the end of the day, you know, we actually like to be the reason why people turn up in large crowds to be with each other and celebrate the music.
But could that tour be an outdoor tour? Could it go outdoors? Would you want it to go outdoors?
At this point, you know, it's very hard to say what it could be until the record comes out and we see how those songs are received. My instinct is that it's not an outdoor tour, that's a Songs of Ascent or something else coming down the line. I think the intensity of the experience, and indeed the way the production was designed for the Innocence and Experience tour, I think it's indoor.
Okay, well listen, do you realise like this is the weekend where so many people have come here to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to celebrate U2 in terms of 40 years. Okay, at U2 have organised this brilliant weekend here. Now the point about it is, and in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's very few bands, there's nobody that I can walk around and see where the same four members have been in a band for 40 years. Going back to the kitchen in Larry's house, I know there's been too many stories, but can you remember that? Because I know that the only reason you were allowed in is because you had a bass guitar.
I can remember it, and I think it was orange. It was a very nice kitchen in the suburbs, but it was we were thinking, you know, playing a gig. We were thinking maybe have a 7-inch single out at some stage. We weren't thinking 40 years down the line. And there was a few of us there. There was Edge and his brother Dick, Bono and his friend Reggie Manuel. There was Steve Martin, another guy from school. And I mean, it was just, you know, kids getting together to see if they could do anything. And I suppose out of it, you know, the four remaining members of U2 were the ones who just went, this is what we want to do. We signed up for this.
And then when you played in the school gym, and there's literally like four kind of kitchen tables stuck together with gaffer tape, and you stood up there. I mean, like, did you give everything you were to the Beach Boys covers and to Bye Bye Baby of the Bay City Rollers? Were they important to you, these songs? And the Rolling Stones?
I think getting to the end of those songs was important, and I'm not sure we figured out what to do when we got to the end. We just kind of stopped. But yeah, they were songs. They were songs that were easy to play, and well, easy to play for someone, not so easy for us.
That's good enough. Do you think, in some ways, though, with the 40 years, that often, regardless of how good, or how good the musicianship is these days with U2, do you think, in some ways, that it's not really about the best musicians? It's about the right musicians, and that's one of the reasons for the 40 years.
Yeah, it's not about the best musicians. We're not virtuosos, well, apart from Edge and Larry, maybe. But no, it's about the quality of the ideas and how you put it across. Rock and roll is, you know, rock and roll has always been a crude expression. It's been very direct. It's been, what have you got to say and say it. And, you know, conversely, pop music has always been the sound of youth. So it is a simple expression, but you've got to understand the power of it when you see it.
Do you know, the funny thing is that, like, even though you mentioned there about it being crude and all the rest of it, is that, you know, you're seen as the gentleman in U2, and always have been seen as the gentleman in U2, and the great manners that your parents gave you, beat into you, no doubt, as a child. The point I'm making is this, that somebody once said of you that you have this instinct for conflict resolution. Any fights in the studio lately that you had to break up?
Nothing recently. No. Everyone's been getting on very, very well. You know, the usual musical fights over recording and where to do it and, you know, what to have for dinner, that sort of stuff. But everything's been fine.
And what about, like, I mean, pre-Octung Baby, those days? I mean, like, was it really that bad over in Berlin or back over there in Dublin or whatever? I mean, was it, like, kind of dodgy, and did it come together through conflicts? That was one of the reasons why it's the best album for so many people here.
It's a great album. Actually, it's probably my favorite record at this point. I think all of this stuff is usually centered around people not being able to articulate what they really want. And the thing about Acton Baby was none of us really knew what it was going to be or what it was going to sound like. So there was a lot of friction and pulling it in different directions. As it happens, I think what we ended up with was a really, really great record, and there's some fabulous songs on that.
And will there be fabulous songs on the next album?
There's certainly going to be a lot of songs. The fabulousness of them is really something that you'll have to decide later, Dave.
Right, okay, well, maybe we will. I think, are we supposed to wind up now? Okay, just one or two more questions that I want to ask, which is, well, the first one is, like, the fact that it is the 40 years, and the fact that you've had such a remarkable career, I mean, where does it go with what happens next? I mean, how like, I'll give you a perfect example of what I was trying, like, 5 or 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, around the time of No Line on the Horizon, you supposedly had a full album done with Rick Rubin. And that album never saw any kind of light of day. Might parts of what that album was surface in what might be next in 2017?
I think that material still exists, but I don't think it would survive in that form. We're very good at going back to things and kind of cannibalizing them and taking the bits that we want. But I think if we were to do anything with Rick, we'd start again from scratch. Songs of Ascent is also in the pipeline. We're going to go back to that at some point. This feels like the end of a cycle for us. This record will probably there'll be some sort of change after that. We just won't be working at the same level of intensity after it. So, the future's wide open. It really depends on where we are in, say, 4 or 5 years' time.
And will you be bringing the 2016 tour that people saw, but not that many saw, because there weren't like 1,000 dates? There's plenty of other places to bring it in 2017. Is that what's going to be live in 2017, what we've seen in 2015?
Yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to go back. We want to go back to that tour. We want to add in the extra songs from Songs of Experience, and we actually want to take it round to everyone. I think we maybe only did 9 or 10 cities the last time around, so really not many people saw it.
And Friday night, the first time you've properly played this year in terms of an audience out front, I mean, what's it like? Like, is there any kind of we'd say in Ireland, a brown trouser moment? Like, is there anything? Do you know what I mean? Like, it can't just be another gig. You know what I mean? Like, did you do a group hug before you went on stage?
It's certainly a brown trouser moment. That's very controversial. It's always great when we get back on stage. It's it is the place where it is just the 4 of us, effectively kind of alone, even though there's an audience out there. But it is the 4 of us on stage doing what we do best, and we have one of the greatest audiences in the world, and to get together with them is always a privilege, and we're very grateful for that.
Do you ever feel that the gap between albums is just a little bit too long these days? I mean, like your last gap was about 5 years and 5 months. The Beatles were only around for 7 years.
Very well made point. I'm mindful of the gap. I don't like the gap. It is a long time between records. It's just what seems to happen, and we always go into it with the best of intentions that we would do it much, much quicker, but that doesn't seem to happen. The rule of thumb seems to be each record takes longer than the last.
Each record takes longer than the last. Well, let's hope it's not as long for next time round, because we were supposed to get something in 2016. We got nothing.
There is no certainty in life.
Yeah, indeed there isn't. Well, listen, Adam, it's been a real pleasure. Can I just say, and I think you'd like to thank everybody that's here today, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the At U2 people for the 40 years to celebrate the birthday of U2. They've been fantastic all weekend, and we've had a great time. And I think you probably want to say thank you, folks.
Thank you all very, very much. It's been a really good 40 years, and thank you for looking after Dave while we're not there.
Thanks, Adam. Good luck. Take it easy, right? Bye.
So I have 3 words. Best interview ever. It's about time somebody asked him those questions.
We still didn't get the title of one song. Not one song.
that was fantastic. Dave, I think we probably should wrap up. I don't know how we could ever top that. So
Nothing much to say, I guess.
no,
Just the same as
just
all
the
the
same
rest.
as all the rest.
Trying to throw our arms around Dave.
It's been wonderful having you here this weekend, yesterday, today. I hope you get time to see the rest of the Rock Hall. And he's been really gracious with his time. So I know we have to kind of clear out here soon. There's another session coming up. But if you get a chance to chat with Dave, he's been taking photos with everybody. He's just been an incredibly gracious guest. And we are so thankful that you've been here.
Well, thank you very much. It's been more than a pleasure to be here. I've absolutely loved it so far.